Welcome back to Maitland, Florida, where we're finally approaching top 8, the Top Cut single elimination rounds here at our Premier Challenge. It's been a fun day already, and we've got 3 more rounds to make it through before we decide our first winner of 30 championship points and the title of Premier Challenge champion as we return to local events for VGC.
So normally this would be about the time where I do the little team breakdowns and try to kind of dissect, like getting right into it. But what I do know is that we are featuring Robert Bosch against the Slitherwing individual. What was that person? It was Anthony, right?
Yeah,
Anthony against
Sabol.
Robert Bosch.
Well, we can see the full bracket up on screen. It's Anthony Sabol, Robert Bosch at the top of the bracket. Emmanuel Zapata and Hunter Brown, who we saw on stream last round. Matt Laughlin, Emily Golub, who we saw both of those on stream in separate rounds, obviously. And Matthew Courtney, Luis Diaz. We saw Matthew on stream earlier. So we've got a good grasp on what these players are getting up to over the course of this event and being able to, see a good measure of our top cut. I think only missing 2 of them across the course of the 5 rounds. But before we get into that, just a little look at what to expect over the course of the day, or at least a little bit of a breakdown, and we can compare it to what we saw. Unsurprisingly, Fluttermane at the top, Chiyu and Iron Bundle following closely behind. Dragonite and Moongus. We've seen Amoongus on team sheets, but we've not really seen Amoongus, I'll put it that way. Ting Lu we haven't really seen. And then the bottom, just kind of this standard mix, good portions of the balanced team. Chien Pao, Arcanine, King Gambit, Glamora, Palafin, and Gyarados rounding out our top 12. So nothing too surprising there. Pretty much exactly what I expected to see. Maybe a little bit higher on the Chien Pao, to be honest.
So going into this next game that we're going to be featuring of Anthony against Robert, I want to kind of put a little bit of a spotlight on the matchup, exactly what it is, how I think it's going to play out, and how this is really going to go. So we have Robert, who is currently playing a Palafin Balance kind of team, which obviously has Palafins, usually has Fluttermane, Amoongus, Arcanine, Dragonite, and King Gambit. Dragonite and King Gambit are kind of the 2 wildcard slots, so that's very interesting for balance. As for Anthony, he is using a team of Dragapult, Dondozo, Tatsugiri, Iron Bundle, Glamora, and Chiyu. So a lot of offensive potential from Anthony's team here. He can go for something like Chiyu powering up the Glamora and, kind of just toxic stalling in the early game. Or alternatively, could go with something like the Dragapult to Will-O-Wisp, the physical threats from Robert's side. And obviously having access to the Dondozo plus Tatsugiri, that's going to be a very, very good tool to just kind of turtle up, as I was saying earlier. Basically, it's just, you get inside of your shell like a turtle would, and then you kind of just play Dozo like instead of a very defensive way that it's very hard to break. So I think Dozo is usually very good at that. Specifically, this kind of Dozo has access to Substitute and Steal, so that turtle mode of Dondozo will be very, very popular here, and I think. But that being said, Palafin does get access to Haze, so it can actually shut down this Dondozo. That's something that's very, very interesting and very fascinating as well. It's saying?
Well, don't worry about the teams on screen. They are a little bit out of date. We'll get those up to date as soon as possible. But, 2 newer players getting involved in 2023 regionals. We saw their achievements on screen a little bit earlier. So 2 players that are kind of just making a name in the scene as well, being able to, see what they can do with the rest of these games. So plenty to play for in this one, but I think as soon as we get into game, we'll see who's putting themselves in pole position. Both teams feel very balanced in different ways and should be able to put on a great game here.
So instead of like how I see this, the Iron Bundle can really pressure Robert's team here because Iron Bundle is just very, very good into most forms of balance because you can hit the Amoongus for super effective damage, you can slow down the Fluttermane, you can hit the Arcanine with a Hydro Pump potentially, and Palafin obviously can get freeze-dried because it's super effective into it. And then not to make that things even worse, the wildcard slots for Robert's balance, Dragonite, that's 4 times weak, and it's Terra Flying, so Iron Bundle's going to put on a lot of pressure there inside this game. But there's one bait play that Robert could potentially go for inside this set, and I want you guys to keep an eye out for this. King Gambit could potentially come in and switch in onto an Icy Wind, and it could raise its attack by 2 stages. So it'll be very interesting to see if Robert can identify a play like that inside of the set, and also if his opponent will let Robert get that. So we get right into it.
Yeah, heading directly into the game, it's going to be King Gambit and the Palafin up against the Chiyu and the Iron Bundle. So a very offensive but frail combination from Anthony. And then a pretty, offensive but, I was going to say as frail and requiring a little more work combination from Robert as well. So a lot of work to do. The one thing I will say, so Iron Bundle doesn't have access to the Hydro Pump. A lot of trainers have been giving up on Hydro Pump, feeling the inaccuracy of it just isn't the value. So this King Gambit could actually really, really freely just Terra into the Fire type and start causing problems that way. There's nothing right now to really answer that King Gambit as safely as you might like.
So something I do want to know is that Terra Grass is obviously very, very tempting here from Chi-Yu, or at least going on the defensive, just for the exact reason that there could potentially be a Terra Water Jet Punch coming out, which will absolutely just destroy this Chi-Yu. However, we see Robert go ahead and switch out into Arcanine. Intimidate doesn't really matter here, obviously, and presumably Robert is anticipating a Freeze Dry to go out onto the Arcanine slot, so that's why this Arcanine went ahead and swapped in. So we actually have Protect coming out from Iron Bundle, and Chi-Yu, I believe it went for the Dark type move into that slot, when it goes for a Dark Pulse into the Arcanine, does, under half. That tanks that very, very comfortably. Kowtow Cleave into the Iron Bundle, but it protects.
Yeah, no damage really coming through there. That's huge, and no terrestrialization from either of them either. I think both trainers maybe trying to hold on to that a little bit, see what value they can get out of it and cause those problems. But right now, the King Gambit still feels like he's in a very, very good position. Was trying to Kowtow Cleave into the Iron Bundle, which would be a huge amount of damage. But Anthony being pretty smart and just being able to protect that one up and try and save himself for a little bit later in the game. It's been a tough one, for these trainers to try and navigate so far. So definitely excited to see how things change up in turn number 2. Just because I think there's still plenty of plays available. There's no easy path forward, and all those plays do require reads as well.
So the current board state is kind of, I would say, more neutral, because this Arcanine can threaten a Terra Water, which we do actually see. This Terra Water resists the Hydro Pump. So the thing is, what kind of stinks here, which I don't know if Robert double checked this, but the Iron Bundle actually does not have access to Hydro Pump. It has Encore. So we're actually going to see that come out in the King Gambit, and that's going to be very, very pivotal. As for, this Heat Wave, the Terra was a little bit early from Robert potentially, because this Arcanine would have already resisted the Heat Wave, and you just did not accomplish much by getting off that Terra Water. So the King Gambit does get +1 inside of its attack stat with this Howl. That's a very, very good strategy. But Iron Bundle kind of just coming out in clutch here and just getting a one-hit knockout. And now we know what's very important is that this King Gambit cannot go for Sucker Punch now, even though it's at +1, which gives this Chi-Yu a window to potentially get a double knockout here with the assistance of Iron Bundle clicking Freeze Strikes. We know that Arcanine has no extreme speed.
Yeah, I mean, this is actually a really awkward encore when you look at it. You think, like, well, why wouldn't you encore it into something that doesn't do damage? Kowtow Cleave, obviously a big impactful move, but as long as it's not Sucker Punch, you think that's a long-term a bit of a win, and you can just sit and Heat Wave with Chi-Yu and its Beads of Ruin ability for big amounts of damage. So it was a tough call there from Robert, where that Terrestrialization went, and I do not know if this Arcanine Water Terror is going to be value in the face of a freeze-drying Iron Bundle. So probably a switch being forced around, you have to imagine, at some point. One of those switches, though, would be the introduction of the Palafin, and that is also going to get freeze-dried for a lot of damage. So we'll see how this one goes out. I do not believe that's the Palafin. That is the Amoonguss. So yeah, the combination of Heat Wave and Freeze-Dry is actually going to be rather ridiculous here. It's, as long as that's what Anthony goes for, and is just able to kind of start sweeping through, he's going to cause a lot of problems. That is the Hero Form Palafin, so looking a little bit better. But Freeze Dry is a great target either side. That is going to be the Amoonguss gone, and the Berry will activate, but I don't think it's going to be sticking around for much longer.
So what's very notable is how much that Freeze Dry did. That Freeze Dry did a bunch of damage to that Amoonguss, and that's boosted to the Beads of Ruin from the Chi-Yu.
Yeah.
So basically, it was a lot of damage. So it would normally do around 50% without the Beads of Ruin. So that's kind of information that Robert can store inside of Game 2 now that he knows that, because right now Robert's job is not the easiest. I believe this Chi-Yu is holding the Focus Sash, which I'm going to double check right here so I can give you good information. It is not actually. It is holding the Safety Goggles. So potentially a Jet Punch could come out here and maybe a Sucker Punch on Iron Bundle, but Iron Bundle could also go for Encore.
Well, he also has access to Terrestrialize as well, and Terrestrializing Ghost, yes, I mean, Jet Punch is still going to hurt, but at least it's not going to be super effective anymore, and that's going to be a really big deal here. Maybe protect the Iron Bundle, try and deal with the King Gambit, taking a Jet Punch, but if you get doubled up with a Sucker Punch and a Jet Punch, you are in big danger. So could just be a case of just trying to make sure you make the right calls. Robert, I think the onus is on him to make the correct decisions here, because Sucker Punch and Jet Punch into Chi-Yu, you are guaranteed to knock it out depending on if it terrestrializes or not.
Exactly. That is a very, very So, like, Robert could totally utilize the concept like of a pin here, which is where you can cover for both options. So maybe, let's just say if Robert were to hypothetically Sucker Punch plus Jet Punch into this Chi-Yu, this cover for the Terra Ghost. So we do see the Jet Punch. That's half of the pin I was referring to. And then if we see Sucker Punch coming out of Chi-Yu, that would be the other half, but we do not see that, so that goes onto the Iron Bundle. Robert trying to split his attacks instead of just committing to a read and just really going to nail that Protect and Iron Bundle and punish it. Robert went for a mid-ground play, and we saw that get really punished.
Yeah, I mean, he's got his choice of the Fluttermane or Dragonite in the back as well. I think if it's Dragonite, things get a whole lot easier, right? Because you just have extreme speed to deal with this Iron. But oh no, it's the Arcanine that we saw earlier. So forgetting about that, the Arcanine not having extreme speed actually makes things a little bit harder here, right? Because like, the Iron Bundle, you know, probably has to take the Jet Punch, but it could just get Freeze Dry off, and that's where things get really dicey. Obviously, you know, the Jet Punch is going to take a knockout on either of these Pokemon, so maybe just going for it if you're Anthony. You know, guaranteeing one of the knockouts, you know, with the Freeze Dry would be really, really important here, and then, you know, you're just able to close things up. But two Water types in a certainly sticky situation. We'll see where this Jet Punch goes. Well, maybe just relying on something like a Heat Wave Miss as well. I mean, the Chi-Yu's in a bad position, right? Like, Heat Wave's been its favorite move so far, and it's just not been able to. It's not going to do well against these two.
So I thought that was a very safe play coming from Anthony. This goes relatively unpunished. Obviously, by protecting, you preserve yourself from this Jet Punch. You also go ahead and just kind of scout out what this Arcanine could do. I would have liked to have seen a Howl from Robert. That would have been the one play could have done to really capitalize on this and take this play to the next level. If he went for Howl right here, that would have gotten much more net value instead of just the Flare Blitz, because, you know, that's going to be healed off with the leftovers. So maybe, you know, if with a Howl coming out, you could have Jet Punch, locked down the Chi-Yu, gone for the Will-O-Wisp, and just, you know, intimidated that, and then potentially just walled it after, or sorry, get off the damage reduction onto it, which Will-O-Wisp burn halves their physical attacks. So that could have gone like a lot of mileage there, but we did not see a Howl coming out. Instead, we saw Flare Blitz and then a great defensive play from Anthony, just really just kind of dragging out this game a little bit and making it just like one little step closer inside of his court.
Well, here it is. It's just going to be an easy Dark Pulse, so no Jet Punch bothering there. It is the Will-O-Wisp into the Dondozo. Will, of course, be limiting its attack, but this is now a low-health Arcanine against 3 from Anthony's side, so going to have a long way to go right now, as Dondozo will just Earthquake, doesn't care about taking out the Chi-Yu, not even going to get to take out the Chi-Yu because of that burn, so the Arcanine has extended the game for one more turn with the burn. Obviously no Commander boosts either, but, you know, at the end of the day, at some point, this Arcanine is going to get felled. No way for it to magically heal up all of its health, you know, and it's just not able to attack both of them at once. So we'll see which one gets to do it. It's not going to be either of them, as Robert throws in the towel and throws us very quickly towards game 2.
So I want you to notice something. That was a 4-0. There was not a single Pokemon that Anthony lost inside of that. So that was really, that's dominance. That's what dominance honestly looks like. It's that you 4-0 someone without really, like, that was not much of a challenge for Anthony. I feel like that kind of came down to a few different plays. One thing I wanted to really point out from Robert here is that he blew his Terra way too early with the Arcanine. It decided to go for a Terra Water, and that did not help him out at all. So the entire point of Terra is so you get a one-turn swing momentum, and then you permanently change your type. So that could either be an offensive thing like such as Terra Flying on Dragonite, or it could be a defensive thing such as Terra Water on Amoonguss. Either way, you need to get value out of your Terra, and Robert did not get any value out of his Terra. So if he wants to actually go ahead and win a game, he needs to get much more value out of his Terra to take this to the next level. As for Anthony, I thought Anthony played that very well. I thought he managed his bundle very well. There was one little opening where Anthony left himself open for a choke inside of that last game, where potentially if the Chi-Yu would have gotten double tapped with the Jet Punch and the Sucker Punch, and that turned the King Gambit and the Palafin were both on the field, then the Chi-Yu would have been knocked out, and then the Iron Bundle could have been left open by a Jet Punch the following turn. That was the only misplay I saw from Anthony. Instead of so one little concept I kind of want to teach here. Well, we still have a little bit of time. Basically, if whenever you're ahead, you just need to start going for damage. The worst thing you can do is whenever your head is going into a very defensive mode and just get red turn after turn after turn. That's a common mistake I see a lot of players make, and that's very, very preventable. So whenever you're ahead, just really push yourself ahead. And if Anthony can apply that concept this next game, he will totally 100% win.
Yeah, I mean, I think both trainers played very well there, but it was just always a commanding lead. That aggressive bundle Chi-Yu just seemed to work. You know, the King Gambit never really got involved in the game. You know, the Amoonguss definitely didn't get involved in the game. So plenty to do, plenty to make up for in this game 2 and then potentially 3.
So I do have a question, Dawes. Do you think that now that Robert knows that the Iron Bundle does not have access to Hydro Pump, that he is no longer threatened by the Iron Bundle as a lead from the Arcanine, that he will change his lead to Arcanine plus something?
Well, I think that's a bold thing to say, just because it's open team sheet, right? It's not like you had to discover that it doesn't have access to Hydro Pump. you are able to look down and know. So definitely a strange one to play around. I mean, I do think the Arcanine's a better lead, but it does just better into Iron Bundle Chi-Yu, but it still just gets hurt really badly by Dark Pulse. It's going to start to add up, and it definitely makes it still a tough one. It's like you're not getting any value out of Intimidate that way either, right? Like, the best thing you could do there is just start howling. But yeah, it's going to be a hard pivot from both trainers.
Oh, absolutely. Okay, this I was not expecting. Now we see Fluttermane and King Gambit coming out from Robert, and we see regular, just regular Dondozo, and then Dragapult coming out from Anthony. So I'm going to paint this with a little bit of picture. So Dragapult has access to Will-O-Wisp. Dozo has access to potentially threatening with Tatsugiri switching in and getting off an Earthquake, doing a bunch of damage that way. Dozo, it's like he's really forcing the mind game to Robert. Like, do I hard switch into Tatsugiri this turn, or do I go for a Will-O-Wisp? Which one are you more afraid of? And he's applying the concept of just pressure from turn one, really just forcing this. Because he's up a game, he's really forcing Robert's hand here.
Yeah, it's something you can do when you've got that bit of wiggle room. The Dragapult will, of course, leave. I like when people do the switch, right? It would be so easy to just leave Dondozo Tatsugiri, but it makes a lot of sense to switch, and hopefully, particularly with the side of the Dragapult being a ghost type, ghost dragon at least, hoping to draw some attention that way and see if Robert took that bait. So we'll see how this one plays out as all the stats go up. Fun thing about the Commander ability is the way that it lists the stats, being attack, defense, speed, and then defense and special defense, is actually how they list the stats in Japan. Their game is a little bit different.
Wow.
For anyone who didn't know that one at home. But it is certainly a little bit different. It is going to be the Amoonguss switch in for the King Gambit, and yeah, this is a much better play by Robert, just allowing the time to set up a substitute. We'll see if he'll be allowed to keep a hold of that substitute as another commander boost. Dondozo just fires off an Earthquake. Yeah, this is still a really good amount of damage, so it's like, yeah, you didn't give up too much, but, your sub didn't matter. So you just traded 25% of your health for, the switch.
That is actually, that's fascinating. Because now Robert is inside of a great position where he could kind of force a mind game. And that mind game is just, do I set up my own substitute, or do I go for Shadow Ball? Like, I feel like Anthony here is really pressured to go for a substitute because he does not want to get spored by Amoonguss. But Robert could technically hard punish this by going for a substitute of his own and potentially a Pollen Puff. Or maybe Robert could switch into Arcanine to intimidate this Dozo, because we do know it is unaware thanks to the team sheet. But let's see. So Anthony going for the Terastallization onto his Dondozo and going for a Terra Steel. And we did see the substitute coming out, so we know that will be the move that is selected. So the Floax going for Protect and not using this opportunity to get up a free sub. So we can only assume that will be connected with a Spore, but we know that will not get off because of this substitute. So let's go ahead and see what Robert does this turn. It is the Spore, just like what I said, and he does not get that off. So that is a crazy good momentum shift if you are a fan of Anthony.
Yeah, Anthony's put himself in a solid position there. Being able to get that substitute for free, I mean, the only play that I think Robert really had there was a substitute of his own to try and drag this game out. But right now, I mean, it really does feel like he's just going to be able to sit here for a little while, and there's going to be nothing that can break this sub super easy, especially with that Terastallization. It is going to be a pivot from the Fluttermane into, I believe that's the Arcanine, is it? No, it's the Palafin.
It is the Palafin, the back Palafin.
Well, this is going to be a long time for this Palafin. It's very useful. As Wave Crash, we'll just connect with it.
Wave Crash coming out. Let's see if a Pollen Puff came out to restore that off. That would be the best possible play Robert could ever go for here. Pollen Puff, it is to restore off all that damage. That is crazy, crazy good proactive play from Robert. So, what seemed like kind of a bad play, that was the best possible play he could have gone for given the board condition. That was his only switch into this Wave Crash. Now he has Haze Pressure, which is the other big thing. So he kind of just got a lot back with that one turn.
Yeah, but he's also going to start just eating Earthquakes, right? And those are going to start to add up. So the Dondozo gets to move first. Fire off this Earthquake, no damage on the Tatsugiri, of course. And all this damage will add up. It's not going to be enough to pressure knockouts, like you say. He gets to Haze, which is going to be pretty big here. But I still think there's going to be so much time taken to deal with this Dondozo that it's certainly going to be a bit of a problem. There's the Haze, so doesn't mind about the situation. All stat changes are gone. And you just get Pollen Puffed again.
Two things I wanted to say about this. This is what Amoonguss does best, is it steals games. So look at that value that he just got. He got off Haze. He just cleared off all the stats. Dondozo cannot switch out. Now Palafin can reset and can be a hero form Palafin for later in the game. What's more important, though, is that Amoonguss gets access to a generator. So if it switches out, it restores 33% of his HP. And then all that damage Dondozo did is now nullified. Do you see? That's what this Pokemon does. It just steals games from people. And it's crazy. And Robert just played that extremely well. And I'm very, very passionate about that because I really like good play. But it will be interesting to see if Robert chokes pokes, potentially by switching out into a Wave Crash and maybe Flutter Mane and letting that go down. Or if the safer Rage Powder, I want to see how Robert really takes this one home.
Yeah, I mean, I think he also just has to sit here and take Earthquakes for a while too, which is going to start to add up, particularly if you're switching. That said, looks like we're going for Terastallization, which is certainly going to be an interesting one. This is going to be the Water Terastallization on Palafin. Just try and increase your damage output, potentially break the substitute with a jet, with anything. Now the stat changes are gone, you do of course have a little bit more time. You do get to Wave Crash it, and then put the Dondozo to sleep. So that's that's going to be the play here from the side of Robert. He's going into the substitute. Substitute takes damage, and the substitute fades thanks to that Water Terastallization, just to make sure. And then it's like, how much can you do? And with this Earthquake, are you going to be able to land maybe a critical hit? Is what he needs. Tatsugiri obviously avoiding, but all this damage keeping going.
Wow.
And yeah, you can see how much it does. And now the Dondozo going to sleep is going to have a much tougher time of being useful in this game.
So, that's just amazing to me. Like, whenever I'm looking at that, I love this game, and I love how in-depth it goes. So what looked like a really, really bad situation, the tables got completely turned just because of this one Pokemon Amoonguss, where all he did is he just soaked up damage, got the perfect turn to put it to sleep, he soaked up damage, healed his allies, being a real team player there, just being like a sponge, just absorbing everything and doing its job. That's all Amoonguss needs to do inside these games. So, we go ahead and see a switch out into the Flutter Mane. It'll be interesting to see what else we go for. Presumably a Pollen Puff if you are switching out into your half HP ally. Just get up to full HP just to really get the most value out of the turn possible. And then probably a switch out from this Amoonguss later on in the game to restore its HP back so we can be more of a team player throughout the game. So that's just Amoonguss. That's just Amoonguss being Amoonguss, just doing what it does best.
Yep, and these Earthquakes aren't going to be anywhere near as threatening without the boost from Commander anymore. They're not going to be able to have that same impact. And while it's asleep, you do kind of have, carte blanche to just switch things around a little bit, get that Palafin back in. It's already Water Terror, and now it's Hero Form. So should be able to start putting damage down and really threatening onto this Dondozo, which is the Steel Terror as well, without its defense boosts. Going to be a lot of issues there. The Pollen Puff will heal it back for, all the way back up to full. So you're free to just keep on wave crashing as you need. And just start causing problems that way. Of course, the Dondozo will wake up. Even when it wakes up, it's already been hazed, so it doesn't really mind at that point.
So this is I think this is a very solid board, honestly, that Robert created. So what's very, very cool about what he can do here now is this is something, because I know Robert as a player, he's someone that's very, very close to me. I don't quite think he'll be able to identify this play that what he could do. I was going to say going for a Jet Punch followed by a Protect, or I guess Wave Crash is much, much safer. I don't know if Wave Crash gets the Oko. I presume it does not, because this is a Dondozo and it's a physical tank. But what you could do is Wave Crash and then protect your Amoonguss and then Wave Crash it again the following turn, and then you can get off a Spore guaranteed into the Tatsugiri. But I also know Robert as a player, so I didn't quite think he would be able to come up with a very, very proactive play like that. But in the future, he asked me specifically for some advice, so this is the advice I'll give you whenever you're watching the VODs.
Yeah, I mean, it's still a lot of damage coming down for the Wave Crash, right? And, it's at some point, what's the Dondozo going to do? Wake up and protect? Well, then it's just going to happen next turn. So really the big thing here, I think, is, being able to have follow-up pressure on the Tatsugiri for me is always the key factor when it comes to how do you beat some of these teams. What can you do? The turn the Tatsugiri gets left on the field, completely vulnerable. It is going back into the Amoonguss, so maybe looking for that Spore play, just waiting. But yeah, there's the Protect. So yeah, he's going to just do the play the following turn.
That's even good. So I'm so proud of him. This is this is amazing. So now what he did, he set up the exact board I just talked about, but he did inside of a completely different sequence. So if you notice, our minds, I was able to see what the optimal play would be here. He was able to identify it just in a different kind of way. So it's like two paths getting to the same destination, and that's exactly what he just did. So now the play which I said earlier, now Wave Crash can come out onto the Dondozo, knock it out, then you get a guaranteed Spore off on this Tatsugiri, and then you either force it to lock itself into Sleep Talk, in which case it's rolling the dice, or it just does not lock into Sleep Talk and it's asleep for the game. So either way, you put into a very bad position where it needs to gamble.
Yep, well, I think this game, even though it's taken a very long time, is firmly in Robert's favor. Definitely going to be a pretty easy situation for him to navigate through, as Anthony's just trying to fight back with this Dondozo. Not really being given the opportunity to do that. Maybe the Amoonguss wants to put this to sleep first. Just being way too safe here. But he's just going to start throwing Earthquakes, which adding up on the Amoonguss. But yeah, he's just being really safe. putting everything to sleep, making sure that you're not getting hit or extra damage down on the Palafin. It's slow and steady, but it'll get him there in the end.
So that's stalling right there. This is like a concept, like instead of singles, this could totally work because it's like a different kind of metagame. It's a much faster pace. But what I'll say though is that like this like stalling, that is something that you can improve upon like that like further. If you like click Wave Crash right here right now into the Dondozo, you could have saved like some leftovers got restored, so your Wave Crash doing more to you instead of recoil. Not to mention you could have gotten the exact same thing off one turn before. So I'm just being very very critical, just so whenever Robert watches this, he will be able to get objective feedback, just so he gets a lot of value out of this. As for Anthony though, that's probably good. You're kind of hoping your opponent kind of gets ahead of himself and makes like a tiny little mistake like that, because you need a bunch of tiny little mistakes like that to get really back in this game at its current board. So Palafin does get off the Wave Crash, and then presumably the Spore will come out just like we said. If not a Pollen Puff, something's going to come out from this Amoonguss that would get value out of this turn from Robert here. And then however this goes will be up to if this Tatsugiri clicks. Actually, I stand corrected earlier. I said it had Sleep Talk. It does not have Sleep Talk. It has Terra Blast. So that changes this a lot. So now this Tatsugiri is guaranteed to be asleep, and it cannot even roll the dice to get out of this. So one Pokemon is not doing anything this board. So Amoonguss can get another. If Amoonguss wants to get some value out of this turn, it totally can, because there's nothing that Dragapult can do to knock out the Amoonguss. I don't think a 1 base power 50 Dragon Darts knocks this out, but if you want to be safe, you can always switch to Gambit. But that could get sniped by a Will-O-Wisp, so we'll have to see how this goes.
Yeah, I mean, I still think the Dragon Darts is probably the safest play here, right? Like, at least get some damage down and try and force some mistakes, potentially, but, maybe that's the idea that he wants to try and clean up with. Of course, Tatsugiri being asleep is going to be very limiting here, and it's just one of those boards, those endgame boards, where it's like, well, I'm asleep, so I'm just fighting 1v3 now, and he's really going to struggle. Of course, there are switches that could be made into the Dragon Darts. He's still got 4 Pokemon on his side of the field, so should be able to tidy this one up pretty quickly. Switches into the Chi-Yu. Not really going to help out unless this Tatsugiri wakes up very, very soon. But yeah, just a Rage Powder from the Amoonguss. And honestly, if this Chi-Yu gets caught by a Wave Crash on the way in, this is going to be pretty tragic.
Yep.
As Tatsugiri is asleep, would get to move first because of that Choice Scarf. There's the Wave Crash. Even though it was Dragapult, I really don't think it matters because this is going to just easily knock out a Chi-Yu.
Yep, that is a snipe. But I also like that play from Robert a lot here because it also covered for the fact if the Dragapult clicked Dragon Darts or Will-O-Wisp, it would be redirected into the Amoonguss, and then Wave Crash would have came out, and then the exact same thing would have happened the following turn where you could Jet Punch that slot, and then Chi-Yu cannot switch in because it's a Terra Water Jet Punch, does not want to switch into that, and then Dragapult would be knocked out because the Wave Crash would do a bunch of chip to it.
Yeah, well, he's really hoping this Tatsugiri wakes up and gets one of the biggest Muddy Waters off of its life.
That's true.
He's going to need to hit both and, of course, lower the accuracy as well. But it's going to be a sticky one to see if he can make it through. So let's see, how this one... It does wake up, so we're off to a good start. Muddy Water connecting with both. Not getting any crits, I don't see. But there's an accuracy drop on the Amoonguss. Let's see what the Dragon Darts can do, as the Dragon Darts, will be able to knock out this this Palafin. So the Muddy Water, is going to be big. And let's see. Yep, there's the second one. There's the Amoonguss. So we're very quickly in a very different game here.
So, I do want to note something. Yes, Robert just lost 2 Pokemon. Yes, Robert could have clicked Jet Punch into the Dragapult to get rid of its Focus Sash. However, I want to just put some spotlight onto this board position right now because Chi-Yu is fainted. Notice how Anthony switched out into Chi-Yu and Chi-Yu went down. Chi-Yu would be inside of a great position right here because it would love this because it could just go for a Heat Wave. It could do a bunch of damage on Kingambit, but now there's no Chi-Yu. It is just a 2v2, which is Dragapult and Tatsugiri against the Kingambit and the Flutter Mane, and notice how both of the Pokemon on Anthony's side are weak to a Fairy type move from the the Flutter Mane, and also a Dragapult is weak to a Dark type move from Kingambit.
Yeah, well, there was no use of the Sucker Punch though, so that is going to be Dragapult getting away with this one scot-free. There's the substitute coming through from the side of the Flutter Mane. And the Kowtow Cleave, very easy into the Tatsugiri to pick up the knockout, so not even having to mess around there. Somehow I think this is just a little bit too much work for this Dragapult to do, but we'll see how this one is going to shake out for the end of the game. As there is, of course, the Phantom Force there. It's super effective, but the substitute will completely nullify the use of that.
Yeah, I mean, all in all, I would like to say that Robert positioned himself into a very, very good board in this end game of a Fluttermane plus King Gambit against the Dragapult and the Tatsugiri. I would like to say one thing, which Anthony, I think, could have improved upon as well. The Chi-Yu, if you maybe saved that for the end game, that would have made the situation much better for the for what you were trying to accomplish there. So, like Dragapult was, it was kind of you could have gotten some value with maybe with Dragon Darts or something, and then gotten a free switch in the Chi-Yu and then close out the game that way. But maybe you identify this, and we'll see you apply something like that instead of Game 3.
Yeah, I mean, the big thing here, right, is you went Dondozo and you got hazed. And in this case, like, it just felt, like, really negative, not being able to really, you know, capitalize on that. So definitely a little bit of work to do as players shape up for game number 3.
So what do you think is going to adjust, if anything, inside any of these games? So I'm kind of looking at this. I'll go ahead and, like, say, like, my 2 cents here first. So I really think that Iron Bundle will be the lead again. I thought that was a very, very good lead. I think Iron Bundle plus Chi-Yu and then Dozo Giri inside the back could be pretty good, but you do need to be mindful of the Palafin if you do choose to do that. Potentially as well, a Glamora could be kind of cool because it can threaten the Arcanine, it can poison everything except for the Amoonguss, and I suppose King Gambit, it cannot poison that as well because it is Steel type, and yeah, it's Toxic Debris. Okay, so basically though, I think that we're going to see a lead of Iron Bundle, and I think Anthony's going to go back to game 1. I think that Robert is going to lead with Palafin this time. That's my hard read on this. But knowing these players, knowing how they've approached this so far, that's what I think is going to happen. We're probably going to see a Palafin lead from Robert, and then from Anthony, definitely going to be an Iron Bundle of sorts. So I think that they both understand this matchup now because they've both had one game to kind of get the read up on each other. Now it's just down to plays because there's really no safe option inside this matchup. It's a lot of reads. Like the turn 1, for example, Dondozo and Tatsugiri can obviously switch out and then double up all of its stats, at least on the Dozo. So you can lead something which threatens a lot of offensive pressure, such as the Dragapult or whatever, and then switch that slot out to Tatsugiri. So we see that 50-50 thing, which I was talking about once again from Anthony, where it's Glamora Dozo, where he threatens the Tatsugiri coming in. And my read was incorrect, actually. Robert sticking with what kind of worked, which was King Gambit, and then except now combining it with Fluttermane. I don't know if Fluttermane was the lead last time, Dawes. I don't know if you remember this. All I remember is there was no Palafin as the lead, but Palafin mid-game came in and saved the game.
Yeah, I mean, the big thing here is if you just get caught with Palafin and Amoonguss again, you just kind of lose. Which is like a bit of a concern if you're facing this one down. But of course, try and Mortal Spin stuff. Try and at least get that going for you, which should be really, really big here. Try and catch the Amoonguss for a little bit more damage. The big thing right now, though, is like, okay, if you stay in with the, with the side of the Glamora, that's going to change things up, right? And you're not just going to be as free to Earthquake. So maybe saving those Earthquakes for a little bit later on. Maybe trying to get down a little bit of fun with the Mortal Spin, get some poison going, and try and wear things down that way as you keep the Dondozo safe and start causing problems. The substitute though going right back up for the side of this Fluttermane. That is going to be a problem because you're going to spend a lot of time getting rid of it. But big Earth Power into the King Gambit, not enough for a knockout anywhere near. And yeah, Grass Terror will protect you from it, but these Earthquakes are feeling pretty bad.
So the person who definitely got the shorter end of the stick here would be Robert, because the one setup Robert's tried going for of the substitute with Fluttermane, it got canceled out by the Earthquake. And in addition to that, that Earthquake was a really nasty one because it also set up Toxic Debris, and there's a second layer of Toxic Debris Toxic Debris from Robert's side now. So now all of Robert's Pokemon are going to be poisoned unless you got the Amoonguss in the back, which I do anticipate there's an Amoonguss in the back. So presumably that's why that play was allowed to happen from Robert's perspective. Now, what I do also want to put a little bit of spotlight on is that Dozo could technically turtle up at any given moment here, because Glamora kind of did its job, or Glamora could go for an attack. It might get Sucker Punched though, so you could maybe see Dozo going for Earthquake, switching into Tatsugiri here. That could be a very good offensive play from Anthony's perspective. But outside of that, I would say that Glamora is inside of a pretty good position. Nah, it's really bad. It's getting Sucker Punched. You want to switch out.
It's not getting Sucker Punched, though, because the King Gambit is leaving. It's very clear that you want to get the Amoonguss in, right? You want to clear that way so you don't just get toxic poison for the rest of the game. Definitely doesn't feel good to lose huge chunks of your health. It's just all about the substitutes right now, and both trainers trying to find an advantage with that. So It's going to be a tough one. There's the Earth Power. It's obviously into Amoonguss. Doesn't really care about this. But, you know, the Dondozo just getting a substitute of its own up. That's going to be big to protect it from Spore. Obviously, the Glamora is currently protected from Spore as well, thanks to that Grass Terror. So, a lot going on. But the big thing here is, like, you know, the Toxic Debris is gone. So that's, you know, kind of, I think that turn 1 play where it's like, oh, you got the 2 layers of Toxic Spike set up, has been completely undone in this instance. And now there's a substitute up too, so you're not even going to have a great time dealing with it that way. This looks like a hard read from Anthony. You know, just trying to call this as soon as he can, but the Moonblast, you know, just going before the Glamora just easily knocks it out.
So substitute is kind of cool here on the Flutter Mane because it ensures that the Dondozo cannot knock out this Flutter Mane no matter what happens at the end of this turn. So Anthony is in kind of a weird situation here because he can only do damage to this substitute, not directly to the Flutter Mane. So potentially Robert saw this as a window to get off a Pollen Puff onto this Flutter Mane, get it back up to full HP, and then the substitute train can just keep on going like it's been doing every single turn, just substitute, putting a lot of pressure. But likewise, Dondozo also saw this as an opportunity to do the exact same thing, so it is also on the substitute train. So this is going to be very interesting because Tatsugiri could technically come in, but I think that Anthony is doing something very like read-based where he's trying to force the mind game of do I switch out Nagiri instead of just immediately going out. He's seeing that as like an asset to his team choices where he could turtle up at any given moment. You have to guess the turn he does it because he has to commit to it on 1 turn. You have to call the 1 turn he does it or else you can lose. That's the kind of mind game Anthony's playing here. I think it's very smart for what he needs to do given the Pokemon situation right now.
Yeah, I mean, the Chiyu's interesting, right? Because like it could threaten the Amoonguss and stop that nasty combination of plays. I don't know about this one on the Dondozo, but we'll see. You know, as he's basically trying to lock in the most efficient move here. I think the big thing for him, right, is like if he's going to go on the offensive and he's going to throw out these just Earthquakes and Earthquakes and Earthquakes, then he needs a way to, you know, try and you know, make sure that he's not just throwing them into the Amoonguss, who's just going to take them. There is going to be the Terrestrialization from the side of Robert, though, which could be really, really big here. It is going to be the Amoonguss, so it is going to go Water type, going to keep those neutral Earthquakes going, and it's just going to help it out against this Chiyu. So this Chiyu could be a complete waste at the current junctures. Yep, Shadow Ball comes through from this side of things. It's going to go into the sub, but we know what Dondozo's up to. Trying to keep itself super safe from the side of you know, being spored or something like that. And this Chiyu Heat Wave is really big. It's even worse now that it misses the Amoonguss. So yeah, not getting much done here. Dondozo resubs, and the target of the Spore is going to be really big, I think.
So I think it actually has to be the Dondozo only because the Chiyu is holding the safety goggles, so presumably would not be into that. But Anthony with a very proactive substitute while going for a Heat Wave, that was very, very clever because that ensured that the Dondozo would not go to sleep here. And the only way that maybe got punished was if Robert had gone for something, say, like a Pollen Puff onto the Flutter Mane and then also a Moonblast on a Chiyu. But that's a very, very big play for Robert to have made because that could have switched into Tatsugiri at any given moment.
Yeah, I mean, targeting down that Chiyu is always a risk, right? Like, you're always, you know, making that 50-50 call on, is it going to become a Tatsugiri, and you're going to look like a fool dealing with it that way. So, plenty of work to do. This is, I will say, our last game available in this tournament. As we go through the substitute train, just some updates. We do have Matt Laughlin, who defeated Emily Golub in the rest of our bracket. Hunter defeated Emmanuel, and Luis defeated Matthews. So we're just waiting on the results of this game to go to top 4. But the substitute's already gone for the side of this Flutter Mane, as Chiyu did just overheat it as well. Dondozo tries to sub again, so expecting something a little bit different here, as once again it's just Pollen Puff. So this game going really slowly. There needs to be an aggressive answer to this Amoonguss, and honestly, now you've dropped a special attack with Overheat, it's just not going to happen.
And you know, likewise, like the probability that like the longer this goes on for, right, the more likely you want to switch into Tatsugiri quicker because you don't want you want the most out of it. But that being said, it becomes equally more readable where it's like, okay, Tatsugiri has to come in now, right? Because that -2. But Anthony, from the looks of it, is abusing that mind game right now. He's like, nah, I'm just gonna stay in. I'm just gonna keep getting like as much value out of this guy as I can for the short time I have with him on the field. And he's looks like he's trying to get the free switch into Tatsugiri, or he's just calling that Robert will like try to read it, and then you know, he won't.
Yeah, well, this is a you know, really slow game from both of our trainers, as it is just going to be a double protect actually on the side of Robert. So holding things off, maybe trying to see the switch, right? Particularly now that you know the Tatsugiri is you know, a lot more tempting now. You've lowered your special attack. But it's just protects all around, and Dondozo, once again, trying to substitute. It's like Anthony is obsessed with his substitute. He needs to keep it up. He's so scared of being spored like he was in the last game. But you know, at some point, it's going to get felled if he carries on like this.
Oh, there we go. That's the mix-up. So this is the double mix-up. Now, so basically, Anthony was going on like turtle mode. Now he's like, okay, you know what? If Robert goes for the safe play again, I'm going to call it this time. I'm going to go ahead and just wave crash into this this flutter main here. I'm going to switch out. Now he's not going to expect it, but Robert might expect this. Robert could do one of two things. He could set up a substitute and then click Rage Powder, or he could Pollen Puff, set up a substitute. Either way, a substitute would be very, very clutch here because we saw the wave crash was actually the option that came out as opposed to the earthquake, given that we don't have spectator mode. So this is yep, we see the Rage Powder wave crash. We already saw that come out. So that's going to go on the Amoonguss. That'll be redirected. Moonblast, however, going on the Tatsugiri. So Robert did not fully capitalize on this with a substitute. He just went for the mid-ground plays. Flutter Main is protected, sure, but that's still a lot of damage, and it's going to be KO'd next turn.
Yeah, I mean, the big thing here, right, is like, what stops you from just dropping down those earthquakes now? That's actually what stops you. It's the parry on a Moonblast. Like, I was like, oh, it's just so in range for a knockout. And I was like, oh, wait, no, it's not. The Citrus Berry getting activated there.
Well, you know, that was just answered immediately. So, you know, what Robert could do now is click Moonblast, because I'm pretty sure that I don't know if it's boost or energy boosted. I have not been keeping track of that, to be honest. So, forgive me on that one. I don't think it actually is. We actually see a switch out if that's the case. Going to switch out into Exodus, which is the Palafin. Going to do the exact same thing that he did inside of Game 1 that worked. So he's going to presumably Pollen Puff this back up to full. But the one key difference between Game 2 and Game 3 now is that Amoonguss is now in Earthquake range. So that changes a lot of how Robert wants to play this. Robert can actually totally just protect and click haze right here. I don't see that as being punished. Do you?
No, I mean, I really don't. You know, the Earthquake feels pretty safe here. You know, you just really want to deal with that Amoonguss. It's Water Terror, so Wave Crash is kind of garbage here. But, yeah, or just switch it out, get the Regenerator going. Obviously, the switch-ins aren't exactly all premium choices, like the King Gambit. Ooh. You know, are you willing to give up this King Gambit, though, just to get back to the combination? Obviously, Tatsugiri avoids. It's going to be an easy knockout on King Gambit, but I assume Haze just follows up here. The big thing for me, though, right, is, like, if you do that, is there a world? So, like, here's the thing. King Gambit's now down. Palafin's on the field. You know, he does Haze, which is great. But now you have to switch out Palafin in this following turn. Which means you're just giving up. Because if you don't switch it out now, right, I think it gets so risky. Because you could just get stuck with a baby Palafin. Which is not what you want. You
want the regular Palafin just specifically to deal with that Chi-Yu into the back, so you have to switch out. I agree. And if you don't, like, that's a very, very risky play. Unless maybe something like a... You know what? I think I know what Robert
I think you just go Amoonguss.
Yeah, like you go Amoonguss, and then I believe what you do is you side Pollen Puff, switch to Flutter Main, or you can protect, switch to Flutter Main. No, actually, you are very, very low on your... you are very, very low on the Palafin, actually. I don't really know. I
mean, here's the thing, right? Is like even if you're Pollen Puffing, that yes, it's now hazed, so it's a lot less threatening, and it's going to take a lot more earthquakes. But you know, this is a really dicey one. Ooh, he's doing the same play from Game 1. He's just going to go after the substitute, you know, try and knock it out, and then let it get spored. But you know, damage by the recoil, not getting rid of that substitute though. So not if he's tried to maybe play into this one, it could get a bit dicey. Ooh, it's so close. The Pollen Puff is obviously going to save it. But, you know, yeah, that's the impact of Haze. But, like, at the end of the day, right, like, your Amoonguss is just getting wailed on. You know, you're starting to struggle a little bit here. And I think, you know, it's going to be close. But I do still think that the side of Rob, you know, he's in a commanding position.
Remember what I said earlier about Amoonguss getting one turn? That's all it needs. So what could... Oh, that got sniped. I saw that. That was crazy. I was going to say, if Amoonguss potentially saw that this Wave Crash would knock out the substitute, knowing that it did last time with the Terra Steel, and it already absorbed one Wave Crash, just 2 times the damage. But Robert not to see that. So anyways, though, that getting sniped, the Flutterman getting sniped, that was such a good play from Anthony. That was so proactive. You know, you still got to get rid of this Palafin and Amoonguss, so it's not, like, over. But it's certainly
he tried to side Pollen Puff, too. So, yes, it's going to be Hero Form Palafin coming back in. But for the next few turns, right, Dondozo can just sit there and, like, just wail out some earthquakes. You know, you don't have any way to switch out the Amoonguss either. And then, you know, at some point, right, Tatsugiri is going to be on the field. Tatsugiri doesn't care about Jet Punch, so it should be able to at least get off one big attack with the Choice Scarf, unless you can play it perfectly. So there's the Wave Crash. Makes a lot of sense there. Will get rid of the substitute this time. No concern on that one. You know, it's its second one. It's obviously hero form as well. So being able to deal with that. There is the recoil, so I mean, it's all going to start adding up a little bit. Here's an Earthquake. It's a post-haze Earthquake, so it looks a little bit less less intimidating. But it's all about the Pollen Puff, and here's my concern is not really the side of the Palafin. Surprisingly, it's like at some point you are just going to lose the Amoonguss. And
that's the biggest thing, right? Because once you lose the Amoonguss, you lose access to your 50% heal move in your Palafin, and the move it becomes much, much harder to win the game at that point. But something I do want to note is that Anthony did just go for a Wave Crash into the Amoonguss, so potentially what could be kind of crazy is maybe a Wave Crash followed by a Wave Crash crit, maybe critting it, and then getting off a last-ditch Spore. Oh no, a crit won't even do that. If I were Robert, I would totally just be hoping I get a double protect, go for the Wave Crash, and just kind of use that to win the game. But
yeah, I mean, now you've got the speed advantage thanks to the haze. That's actually really, really big. But the leftovers is going to start coming through as well, so it's certainly going to be a tough one. And I do think, like, at some point, right, is like this Amoonguss just has to go down. And once that goes down, you know, you've still got the Tatsugiri to pop out as well. He goes with double protect.
Does not get
Doesn't get it. So I think this one should be wrapped up from here.
That's. Oh, sorry.
Wait. We've got to wait to make sure it. Yeah, there it is.
Yeah. So notably, so Robert still went for his optimal play, which was going for the double protect. Sometimes you do need to get that where because Anthony played so well, Anthony got so far ahead that Robert actually had to rely on a 1/3 shot. But good on Robert for identifying inside the current position that the double protect was the best odds of winning the game. So, you know, he was going for it, but, you know, also good for the spirit of the game and also, you know, sake of consistency that he did not get it. So Anthony actually wins this. I thought Anthony, like, so the key, like, I want to highlight just the key moment of this game. It was just that mind game of, do I switch into Tatsugiri now or do I switch into it later? And then Anthony was just abusing that. He kept Robert just guessing. He's like, okay, he's not going to expect me. And then he got Robert on the exact turn he did it, where Robert went for a Moonblast into that Giri slot, and then it wasted his turn. And then also, like, later on to the game, Anthony also made a very proactive play of wave shotting into the Flutter Mane, which just got the knockout. And those were the two main highlights of that game, which just really separated Anthony from Robert here.
Yep, well, there's going to be a Wave Crash to knock out the Dondozo, so we're at least going to go, you know, down to the last two. But at some point, you know, you're going to have to, you know, answer for the Choice Scarf Tatsugiri. That is going to come through and be able to hit you really, really hard. Even harder now the Beads of Ruin is in play. So, you know, yes, Jet Punch would be great here. But, you know, I don't see that threatening the Tatsugiri anywhere near enough. Of course, there are misses to be had, so Chiyu's going to protect itself. You know, I think this is relying on it. Let's see what Robert went for. Oh, he's just going for the protect.
So Robert read that. Like, that's the only reason why I go for protect there. But something I just got to point out, you know, it's like the reason why, like, I'm such a defeatist on this, in the aspect that, in my eyes, Robert would need literally a miracle to happen, like, right here. Because straight up, like, Jet Punch can knock out Chiyu, yes. But if the Tatsugiri is 4 times resistant to any water-type moves, so, you know, assuming that you get, like, 5 Draco Meteors in a row, then maybe you can win. But that's asking for a crazy, unrealistic amount. So let's see. If Draco Meteor connects, it's over, which it does, and that's it.
Yep, that's going to be the end of our top 8 here. A long set between Anthony and Robert, number 1 versus number 8. But eventually it is going to be this classic Dondozo team able to triumph and take Anthony into top 4. So fantastic games on stream so far today. Pretty sure he's going to be in a good place to try and you know, bring things back. And, you know, coming in as number 1 seed, you've got to be feeling pretty good about your play all day.
That was very, very proactive play from Anthony there. Really, I just wanted to put 2 highlights on that. Just like I said, the mind game of switching in Tatsugiri on the exact turn, and he was so good at that. That's the experience of a very good player, at least someone who's played Dondozo Tatsugiri like thousands of times, you know, where you just you saw your win condition, you went for it. You saw that if you nail that turn, that Tatsugiri switches out or switches back into play, then you'll just yoink the game. And that's exactly what Anthony did. That was very proactive. And also sniping the Flutter Mane. Those were 2 crazy, crazy moments that just really separated this game from Robert winning to Anthony winning. So I just want to put some highlight in that because I love some good play.
Yeah, some really good gameplay there. But we are knocking on a little bit later in our day, so we're going to take a very small break and get top 4 ready for you as soon as possible.